Hello everyone, I'm Daniela, and for today's video I was in the mood for some sewing. I've been self-teaching me how to sew and I was inspired by a top I saw on a vintage style shop to try and make something similar to that. The top is this one. It has what I think is a fake button placket, some lace details and a pretty gathered waist. I will leave a link to the shop in the description box below, but this top is out of stock, at least for now. As for fabric, I didn't have anything as pretty as the one on the source image, so I went with cotton white bedsheet from IKEA. I went into this project as a sewing exercise, so I also didn't want to waste a more expensive fabric on this. So here's how I made the pattern. I measured myself around the torso and figured that a square piece of fabric with 39 centimeters would be enough. You'll see later that I actually ended up tightening a bit. Added seam allowance and also added the darts 10 centimeters under the neckline, and I made them 8 centimeters deep. I know it's kinda hard, but try to figure out if the top will fit over your head. Otherwise, you may need to add a zipper so it can open up a bit more. I traced all of these measurements onto some tissue paper and pinned it to 2 layers of fabric, facing right sides facing, and cut it. Before removing the paper, I used chalk to mark the placement of the darts. After cutting, I pressed the darts with the iron and pinned them in place on both sides. Then I just sewed them with a straight stitch, which is also the only type of stitch that this machine does, unless you use a special zigzag attachment, which I don't really like, it's kind of fiddly, so that's why you'll see that I didn't make any stitch to keep the ends from fraying. Next I ironed the darts to keep them nice and sharp. For the fake button placket, I cut a strip of fabric with the same height of the torso piece and about 6 centimeters in width, adding seam allowance. Then I ironed it, folding the edges inside like this and pinned it to the center of the main piece. Then I sewed it close to the edges on both sides. Then I placed the back piece, right sides facing, on top of the front piece and pinned the sides. You can't really tell on this shot, but I didn't account for the loss of height from the darts, so the bottom doesn't quite match. But that worked out fine, since I had cut the fabric longer than what I needed, so just bear that in mind when you're making yours. Again, I sewed it on both sides. Halfway through, my bobbin thread ended, so I wasn't actually sewing through anything, but if you by any chance want to know how these types of machines wind bobbins, a threadle machine, this is how I do it. First, obviously, I take the bobbin out and placed it in the winder, which is this section right here. Then I untighten this piece. I think it's called the stop motion screw, maybe. This will stop the motion of the sewing needle so the thread doesn't get all tangled up. Wrap the thread around the bobbin and put the thread through this piece at the bottom. This will give tension to the thread. Now I just pedal while pressing this, latch, and that is it. Once the machine was loaded and ready to work, I continued on sewing it the other side as well. Remember when I told you I ended up tightening a bit? This is what I meant. I tried it on and tightened it about 2 centimeters, also rounding up slightly towards the neckline to fit a bit better. Then I trimmed the excess fabric and pressed the seams. While I was at it, I also double folded and pressed the hem for the neckline. For the straps, I measured and cut 2 strips with about 2 by 37 centimeters, adding extra for seam allowance. Then folded and ironed it before sewing the sides on both strips. I used a loop turner to turn the loops inside out. You can always just use the regular safety pin method as well. And then I just iron them. Then, and I'm sorry in advance for the strange camera angle, I don't even know what came across my mind while setting the camera for this video. I placed the straps in place, trying it on to see the placement and size. I cut the excess and folded it inside the seam, using a pin to hold it. Next, I sewed all around the neckline. I figured I could also hem the whole thing already, so I cut and did the same double folded edge at the bottom of the top. The last piece left to cut was the casing for the cord that tightens the top at the waist. I cut two 39 by 2.5 cm pieces and attached them together to make one long strip. I ended up also sewing the seam down to keep it flat once I put the cord through it later. Then folded and ironed the edges inside. I didn't need that much seam allowance, so I trimmed it a bit and set this piece aside for now. Next, I tried the top once again, pinned the place where I wanted the top to tighten. I marked it a bit above my natural waist. To put the cord through once the casing is attached, I need to make 2 small holes on each side of the button placket. So I marked them and sewed it so the holes wouldn't fray. Then pinned the casing in place and sewed it all around the top. I didn't have a matching cord, so I created a super long strip out of the same fabric, pinned a safety pin to one of the ends and pushed it inside the casing until it reached the other side. Lastly, for the finishing touches, I sewed a strip of lace to the top of the neckline and sewed the buttons in place. And that is it. This is the finished result. So, how do you think I went? I'm pleased with the result. The only thing that I would change is that I would have liked to have made the top slightly more A-line shaped, opening up a bit more towards the hips and also creating a bit more gather. But overall, I think it looks pretty cute. Before you go, if you have any tips or tricks that you would like to share, I would greatly appreciate them, so leave them in the description box below, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!